this is the last of the YouTube segments here, and on the Suite du Merlin. And I want to focus in on Merlin's death and the events that lead up to it. So on 369, when he learns that she wants him to go to Britain, he knows that there's reason to be suspicious about it. He isn't suspicious of her, but he thinks that something's wrong. He says, "The truth is, Lady of the Lake," said Merlin, "there is nothing I would more gladly do than go to Britain, if I were not fearful of being betrayed and killed." "You must not have any such fear," she answered. "You may be sure that I will watch over you as carefully as I watch over my very self. For I love you more than any other man in the world, and rightly so, since you have taught me everything I know. Since you have taught me everything I know, and my happiness depends on you." So, again, she knows that he lusts after her, and so we can understand that she's trying to figure out the right way to avoid this, understandably. But she does take it quite far, right? She's now openly lying to him about her love for him, and taking advantage of these feelings that she knows that he has for her. And so she's willing to lie quite boldly, and perhaps we could argue that it's a good lie, right? So this leads to eventually his death. And I'm going to skip a little bit of this material about Arthur and the flame that will burn as long as Arthur reigns. And there goes my dog Charlie again. So the death of Merlin is described as first really being a dying that is led up to by his love for, or his unrequited love for the Lady of the Lake. It says, the bottom of 371, "Now according to the tale, when Merlin left the sorcerers whom he had brought to a dreadful end," as our book has already recounted, "he rode on together with his companions for the rest of the day, and then spent the night with a very worthy vavasor, who offered them all the warmest welcome he could. But Merlin was dying of love for the young Lady of the Lake. He did not dare make any advance to her, because he well knew she was still a virgin." So, whereas earlier in the text, he wanted to have sex with her because she was a virgin, at this point in the narrative, he knows that it's irresponsible of him to try to have sex with her because she is a virgin. So maybe there is some sort of development conscience that's really reasserting itself here for Merlin that might make us more sympathetic to his cause. But it does say right after that nevertheless he did not expect to wait too long before becoming intimate with her and doing what a man does with a woman, right? So you can imagine the writer just saying, well, of course he's still thinking that this is going to happen. So again, many of these statements are undermined, so this is why we want to read them closely and try to make arguments based on the connections that we can make. So in the next section, we learn how Vivian orchestrates his trapping, right? On 372, they enter the perilous forest, and this is where they come across the secret chamber of lovers who died the same day. This is described on the bottom of 372, top 373. It says, "They died on the same day and were buried together in the chamber itself." That, I think it should make us think of the story of Tristan and Isolde. I think it's quite consciously paralleled to that, although, of course, Tristan and Isolde were not buried together, but they did die in the same day. And their bodies are still there and will not decay as long as I am alive, because they were embalmed. It's interesting that they won't decay as long as he is alive, because they're embalmed. And of course we find out that he gets trapped in there. So I guess we assume that he might eventually decay along with them, which is this strange really kind of necrophilic menage a trois, I guess is one way to think about it. So or maybe that's the way Vivienne thinks about it. So he tells her this story, and of course she becomes fascinated with it, and she wants to learn all about this secret chamber, and he leads her through this tour, almost like a medieval real estate guide about where things happened. And so then at the bottom of 374, she has convinced him to stay with her, and she is in the middle of the page on 374. Says the girl ordered her bed to be made in that very room, so she wants to stay the night in this house as well, which is very bizarre. It seems like kind of a Halloweenish kind of scenario where she wants to go to this place where we know these lovers are entombed, and she wants to stay in the same place. And so she lay down to sleep. Merlin did likewise, but in a different bed. And that night Merlin had been feeling a great torpor rather than his usual alertness and cheer, and fell asleep because she had enchanted him. It says, when she had numbed him to such an extent that he would be powerless to move, even to save his neck from the axe, she threw open the door to the room and called her men to come in. So she had these men accompany her. She was just, basically this kind of what's described like a lump of earth. And she says, look at how the enchanter is enchanted. So there's a sense in which she... hang on one second. I got to get something from my... Hang on one second. Misbehaving dog, chewing on things that he could choke on. So the next passage on page 374, it says, in their astonishment, they crossed themselves and said that they would never in the world have imagined that such a thing could happen. She says, now tell me, she said, what shall we do with him? He followed me on this journey not for the sake of my honor, but in order to disgrace me and take away my maidenhood. I should rather see him hanged than let myself be touched by him, for he is the son of the devil, and I could never, for anything imaginable, love a son of the devil. So now she's saying, and we know that she hates him because of what he did to her. Hang on a second, my dog is still causing trouble. Charlie, what are you doing, buddy? I think he's demanding his walk right now. So I will try to get to the end as soon as I can here. I must decide then how to free myself of him. If I do not make sure right now that I am free of him forever, I shall never again find as good an opportunity. So she says that she wants to kill him because he's the son of a devil, and she would never be with someone like that. But I think we're right to maybe distrust that reason. I mean, she seems to be just really not liking him from the very beginning because of his lust for her. Okay. On page 375, this is the final description of placing him into the tomb. So she told, this is at the top of page 375, at that she told the men to pick him up by the head and feet and throw him into the tomb where the two lovers lay. Then she had them replace the stone slab. When with great effort that was done, she began her incantations, and with her spells and magic words, she so tightly bound and sealed the slab in place that there was no one afterward who was able to move it or open it or look at Merlin, dead or alive, until she herself returned at the request of Tristan. So Tristan is brought back into the story to kind of remind us that, oh yeah, he had been evoked earlier. And then the middle of the page, it says, I shall not recount any more of this episode in the present book, because the tale of the cry, which doesn't survive, recounts it in detail. You may know, though, that the cry that Master Hali has written about is the last cry that Merlin ever uttered in that grave in which he lay trapped. His cry came from the sharp pain he felt when he realized that he was being killed by a woman's cunning and that a woman's craft had defeated his own. So all of a sudden we get this commentary that this is about being defeated by a woman. So we have this kind of anti-feminist strain come up at the end here, which seems to be the narrative voice maybe condemning the actions of Vivienne. So maybe the narrative voice is very much sympathizing with Merlin, but I think as readers we might find many more problems with this kind of narrative sympathy. So I'll stop with that, and I will end this section by asking the discussion leaders to show you that clip from Excalibur, John Boorman's Excalibur in 1981. Some of you may have seen this film before, and we're going to visit it again later in this class. It's a really interesting film. It may seem bizarrely old-fashioned and strange to many of you, and I think it's largely a bad film, but it's one of the better Arthurian films, unfortunately. Also, you may be interested to know that John Boorman originally wanted to make, he was pitching ideas to producers to do a Lord of the Rings film. And if you watch Excalibur, you'll be thankful that he never succeeded in doing that. But this scene is a scene between Merlin and Morgana. And Morgana is played by Helen Mirren, and I'm guessing some of you know who she is. And this scene is when he's kind of showing her this kind of like Chamber of Secrets, really. And it takes both the kind of the evil machinations of Morgan Le Fay, as described in other texts, and the way that Vivienne in our text tries to trap Merlin. So hopefully you guys can watch the film, and there will be a little bit of time maybe to offer some reactions about the way that Morgana is being presented in ways that are maybe interestingly similar or different to Vivienne. Other than that, I would look forward to seeing you guys next week when we'll be reading Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I think probably the best Arthurian or piece of Arthurian literature ever written. And I hope that this video has not been terribly disengaging for all of you. And I hope you have a good discussion section on Friday. Bye-bye.